Нет, я помню просто, когда был курс по этому, по классическим наукам, как спрашивают, какие лет. Там, исследовательские показывались.
Reza, 1 second, the volume. Can you see something? Like just do an output check?
Yes, I can see everything.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, you want to start right off, or you know?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, the thing is that the picture coming from your side is a little bit glitchy. I mean, do you have my smooth picture? Precisely because I think that if this continues, then maybe we should, you should turn off your camera, and I will retain my camera just for the sake of bandwidth.
Okay, wonderful then. Yeah, if at some point you have that problem, just tell us, or I can do that right away.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
So, let's just start.
I can introduce you or something, like, you know, formal stuff.
Sure, absolutely, feel free.
So, if you didn't know, this is a lecture / Q&A with Reza Negarestani, author of Cyclopedia and forthcoming Intelligence and Spirit, a wonderful chapter from which we have read just beforehand. Yes, this will be a small 15-minute talk, and after that we can ask all the questions we can, hopefully, depending on
oh, I thought that the 15 talks was just the questions and answers. I'm not supposed to talk.
Well, if you want to, we can talk right away, but, you know, you told me you were going to have like a 10-minute something.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. So, as you have probably read the text is a specific section. Do you still have my picture?
Yep. Yeah, we are checking. I'm just turning everything off just for the sake of the lecture.
Okay. Please let me know if my connection also goes out. Just remind me if you can't hear me. Anyway, so yes, this section is actually part of the second chapter of the book, where I do very briefly conduct an engagement with David Rodin's disconnection thesis. You should understand that David Rodin's work on post-humanism is quite actually sophisticated. He's not like transhumanist of the kind that you hear in media, like Nick Bostrom and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, I think that in the last instance, it suffered exactly the same kind of pathologies and what you might call to be flaws essentially how David Roden pictures future post-humans is built upon the understanding of dynamic systems. At least since the time of Poincaré, we know that dynamic systems are essentially predisposed to the smallest perturbations. What does that mean? It means that over time, these small perturbations can accumulate and they fundamentally change the trajectory of the system. So far, the trajectory of the system becomes divergent from its initial conditions. So if we take human, the concept of human, the figure of the human, whatever we mean by it, as some sort of initial condition system, AGI version 0.01. And then, of course, given these kind of small perturbations, which are introduced by technological time, which, by the way, you should understand that technological time for Roden is essentially a counterpart of the Darwinian deep time, like a kind of technological evolution. So, given such small perturbations over time, the system, namely the human, its trajectory fundamentally diverges from its initial condition, meaning humans here and now. And of course, I criticize this precisely because I don't think, first of all, the whole idea of applying this a specific feature of dynamic systems in terms of stability analysis to a concept is itself question. Notwithstanding, the other problem that I have with this idea is that this explosive divergence from the initial conditions is nowhere actually being implied in the analysis of stability in the dynamic systems. It's simply a folklore, simply being propagated by, I would say, some people who really don't have any grasp of system analysis, or worse, by cousins of philosophers. So this is number one. Number two is the idea that, okay, technology can exert such influences upon the concept of humanity to the point that post-humans, which are essentially technologically evolved species, fundamentally different from human, to the extent that we cannot even use the concept of human in order to speculate how they might be. Well, this is what I would call basically what Kant calls Schurmai, or a speculative enthusiasm, also known as vagary. This is just a vagary, a whimsicality, short of a methodological enunciation that allows us to argue how technology, in fact, evolved and what kind of technologies can, in fact, influence the concept of the human, and to what extent all such, basically, I would say, Rodenian or post-humanist theses fall in the trap of what Kant calls vagary, or speculative enthusiasm, simply armchair speculation, if you want. Third, the entire thesis of the disconnection, or basically unbound post-humans, does not actually tell us what the species or future AGI doesn't look like some sort of radical aliens in the sense that it is fundamental and intelligible. So what it instead tries to do, it comes up with a term called strange post-human successors. Strange as in contrast to the word alien. Now, strange means that while it is not in a very ready-made way, while it is not in this ready-made way, not interpretable, but this does not mean that it is not uninterpretable in principle as such. So, of course, lacking the methodological aspects and also the criteria of interpretability, the specification that's pertinent to it, Rodin saw as other kinds of post-humans, like Nick Bostrom or Yudkowsky, all they can talk about is about the ethical or existential repercussions of the emergence of a true AGI or a strong AI. This is what Nick Jabo calls a Pascal scam. It's essentially a version of Pascal's wager. In the sense that, okay, like a skeptic says that, well, this is not going to happen with such intensity. And they say that, well, what if it happens? You know, it's like an atheist says that, well, God doesn't exist, Darwin proved it. And then they say that, what if God exists? You see, this what if is already what you might call to be a whitewash over theological assumptions of the Pascalian kind. In the sense that, yes, everything can be turned into a what-if question, a Pascal scam or a Pascal wager. But you should understand that the entire discussion of Pascal and also Rodin is built on implausible conditions that, by virtue of some flawed methodological criteria, are turned into plausible conditions. And then we ought to take the plausibility of such conditions so seriously, as if our lives were dependent on them. Like, you know, if you are an atheist or you are an unbeliever, Pascal says that, what if God exists? Well, then you are basically scammed, swindled into this discussion that, okay, maybe I should actually pray 5 times a day and do this and do that, precisely because, you know, what if actually it exists? But your whole thing is a scam, you know, the whole thing is a probability scam. It's a probability scam. Number 4 is that, sure, David Rodin tries to, as I mentioned, represent the idea of a future AGI or post-human, not uninterpretable in principle, which means that it can be interpreted, but of course, insofar as the criteria of determination are underdetermined, means that they are actually undetermined. In that case, for number 4, I actually discussed about the idea of computational cost and so on and so forth. That, okay, let's even not talk about rational interpretation of what is criteria of determination of post-human futurity might be. Let's just talk about empirical computation. But the very criteria by which Rodin sets apart post-human future from the current humans is post-human futurity, or disconnected or unbound post-humans, become in fact uninterpretable to his woe, to his own surprise, insofar as they really do not have any empirical computational criteria of interpretation. And in that sense, once the criteria of interpretation in any sense, whether rational or empirical, falls or collapses, then we are essentially in the realm of theology, in the theological business. We can just as well talk about angels dancing on a pavement and call it post-human future. So these are the four, I would say, main critical points that I levy against this connection thesis, but also what is usually considered as AGI post-humanism. So this was, the rundown of the entire paper. I am delighted to hear your questions, suggestions, or thoughts.
Thank you so much, Reza. If I may, I can start the questions. So just before reading the chapter, I reread, your points on humanism and also the three nightmares of the inductive mind. And I may be mistaken, but it seems that the problem of the three nightmares seems very connected to what Robin is talking about at some fundamental level. And also, I'm not sure if that's true, but I felt like you were doing a very Buckmanian move when you were talking about how basically every open system in this sense satisfies Roland's criterion for an AGI, the same way that Putnam uses his theorem at the end of the appendix in the reality of representation. But I just wanted to ask, your general opinions on, this is kind of a foregoing question. Throughout the school, we've been hearing Andre Roland's lectures on the new problems of axioms versus types, rules, the Reza and the Hilbert system, a more constructive approach to mathematics. And after the text, there is this very practical question. After Pete's text, after your text, there seems still to be a problem in terms of the realizability of transcendental logic in terms of formal procedures, in terms of formal languages. So it seems very, natural to talk about like Greston-style systems, something like Martin-Love type theory, where you posit types along with rules. Yet it seems that the way at least Pete suggests treating transcendental logic is that there are some axioms embedded into it. So a programming language like Haskell itself doesn't, introduce a proper stable ground for AGI. Do you maybe have any, sort of formal opinions on what it takes in terms of formal languages and actual procedures on what it takes to build an AGI?
Sure. Only as a philosopher, I can talk about these subjects. In the sense that essentially we can never extend or overextend the idea of transcendental logic to formal logic. And by formal logic, I do not mean formal logic in the classical way, but I'll mean simply all formal linguistic instruments or logical instruments. Essentially, programming, contemporary forms of logic, so on and so forth. Now, you see, here a Kantian dilemma arises. So, Kant, in the critical reason, as you know it, make a distinction between transcendental logic and formal logic in general. Of course, for Kant, pure formal logic, namely logic as an organ, as the constitutive of all sciences, is an illusion. Whereas transcendental logic is real, transcendentally real. In the sense that, so what is this? What is this factor that makes such a distinction possible? So you should understand from a computational perspective, essentially all computations require some sort of physical substrate, in the sense that it would be just absurd to talk about computation as if we could just do this without any kind of physical constraint, whether they are time, space, memory, resource, computational cost, resources, so on and so forth. And that's why you can, today, I would say that it is possible to think of transcendental logic as essentially a theory of computational complexity, in the technical sense of what we mean by computational complexity, in the sense that all of our computations require a certain amount of resources, a certain amount of cost. This cost, of course, requires a certain amount of metabolism, energy, so on and so forth. For example, the biological species, such as ours. Another thing is that, from this perspective, transcendental logic, understood in the vein of computational complexity, is essentially the idea of thinking or computation or calculus from the perspective of a limited being. You see, and that's why Kant sets apart the idea of transcendental deduction or transcendental subjectivity from a class of possible subjects, which can be said to be endowed with intellectual intuition, like God. As if they have infinite memory, they have infinite time, they have infinite space, so on and so forth. So the idea of transcendental logic is essentially what you might call to be computational logic, crafted for the limited beings such as us. We don't have infinite time, we don't have infinite memory, we don't have infinite space, so on and so forth. We are also, any kind of computation costs us something. So this is what I call transcendental logic reinterpretation. Computational reasoning. Now, what is formal logic? Formal logic today, you can think about it as essentially there are resources, conceptual or logical resources, which are temporarily divorced or separated from such concerns about the physical instantiation of computation. They simply are concerned with the logical instantiation of computation. Now the thing is that as long as you do not allow for formal logic to blossom, to expand, so as we can actually understand how we can possibly compute, your transcendental logic is limited. Now, this doesn't mean that formal logic by itself is sufficient to address the problems of subjectivity or subjective computation or computation as pertaining to limited being. All it means is that the conceptual logical resources should not be a priori subordinated to the physical concerns of computation.
Thank you so much. So, does anybody else have any questions? Who's first? Okay. Yeah. Главное, не напротив камеры прямо стой, она здесь нас будет.
Здесь, да?
Да.
Hi, I wanted to ask you a question about your divergences with the project of David Rodin, which you are criticizing in the chapter we were talking about So I wanted to ask you, do you provide a kind of something like a positive account introducing the alternative view to the notion of the ecological agency of the hyperplastic agents as developed in Rodin? I mean, so do you have something like the theory of agency for the AGI as kind of cognitive agent, and how can it be conceptualized, and is there any kind of relevance to the recent non-reductionist and non-functionalist theories within the cognitive science and philosophy of mind? Thank you.
Sure. You see, a possible scenario to that of Rodin, I would say, doesn't mean that it's essentially non-cognitivist or non-physicalist or non-functionalist for that matter. First of all, we should understand that the thesis of functionalism can come in so many different ways. We have normative functionalism, we have physical functionalism, we have multi-dimensional or multi-level functionalism, and the same thing about physicalism. For example, physicalism usually understood as a kind of brute greedy reduction in philosophy of mind. Or for example, look at the new work of Orly Shanker, S-H-E-N-K-E-R, Orly, O-R-L-Y, Orly Shanker. Orly Shanker's thesis about physicalism of mind. Now you see that things have fundamentally changed. These terms and terminologies come in variations, and not all of them mean the same thing that, for example, we traditionally knew about such terms, as if they are kind of reductivist, flattening, so on and so forth, ontological flattening, so on. I would say I don't have actually a problem with David's thesis. In the sense that, yes, absolutely it is possible for a future AGI, regardless of its possibility of eventuation or not, to fundamentally differ from what we take ourselves to be as a biological species. However, such a speculation by itself is not sufficient for us to talk about post-human future. The only way that I'm thinking that this can be possible in a scenario is when we take ourselves as what we might call to be the prototype of a post-human AGI. We are simply living in the prehistory of intelligence. We are cavemen. As far as it's concerned with the history of intelligence. However, to get out of this cave, to actually be capable of philosophically and scientifically talk about post-human intelligence or AGI, rather than theologically talking about it, we need to understand exactly what Kant and Hegel already insinuated. And what was that? The idea that our transcendental structures, by virtue of which we cohere and organize our sensible intuitions so as to come up with a structure or form of appearances, and by virtue of that, then we move to the scientific image of ourselves in the world. All such transcendental structures can in fact be renegotiated. We can think about, and in fact science allows us, to think about other forms of space and time, other representations limitations of space and time. For example, time, even in the Kantian parlance, is essentially an asymmetric arrow of time. It moves from past to the future. Hence, you have impression 1, impressions 2, and impressions 3, corresponding to past, present, and future, once brought under the apperceptive unity. Now, science actually tells us that there can be other kinds of species, there can be other kinds of observers in the universe, endowed with different arrows of times, moving, for example, from future times, or might not have any kind of time asymmetry, in the sense that time is symmetrical for them. Now, this allows us to actually envision different kinds of models for what we call the observer, the subjective observer. And once we get into the nitty-gritty details, we might be able to actually renegotiate the ways by which our biologically and locally constituted, for example, structure of memory, entitle us to a certain kind of perception and not others. Of course, Kant would say that a speculation about other kinds of perception is still an armchair speculation. But the thing is that at this point, with the advent of modern sciences, there are no longer armchair speculation. There are actually what you might call to be visions of alternative counterfactual worlds and their subjective inhabitants.
Thank you so much. Next. Yeah. 1 second. We just have some time lapses.
Good evening, Reza.
Nice to meet you.
My name is Eugene. So first, I would like to thank you for the fact that you have joined us today. So my question is, can you please give us an expression of the concept of technological time, and if it's
Can you repeat that? What kind of time?
technological time?
Technological time. Okay.
Yeah, it's from the text we read today. And actually, I wanted to ask like a sub-question. If it is so, how does it relate to the concept of technological singularity? If it is so, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, in the sense that posthumanists such as Nick Bostrom and David Rogan use the idea of technological time, is absolutely identical with the idea of technological singularity. It's essentially they are the same thing. So, I mean, they're basically the same thing. So technological time, what you might call to be, is essentially a teleological, not in an Aristotelian sense, but in a kind of dynamic system trajectory unfolding of understanding of technology. Is essentially a kind of what you might call to be a technological counterpart of Darwinian deep time, in the sense that a speciation, it goes through, a procedure of entrenched constraining, complexification, so on and so forth. And this complexification usually is proportional to the reduction in variations of the species as the complexity of the species increases, the variations, namely the possible changes in, for example, the morphogenesis of the species are being reduced. Because of the, and this has something to do with a concept called generative entrenchment, in the sense that, you see, so you can think of this like this, that you have different layers of a building. You put the base, armature, and then you build bricks on top of it, and then more bricks, more bricks. Now, you see, as you put the stuff on top of what you have already built, your existing constraints, it is very hard to actually vary your structure drastically. You have to abide by the fundamentals, by the armature, by the existing or constraints which are already in place. And this, yes, this allows for increasing complexification at the cost of decreasing variation. With the technological time, you also get the same. For example, you have certain cultural canalizations, like tool making, language use, evolution as modern science, and so on and so forth. Now, after this period, which you might call to be the kind of initial phase, technological evolution becomes ever more complex, but it does not become variable, because the variation can actually result in a fundamental collapse. Exactly like evolution. Like imagine that we were growing another brain, like some sort of mutation right now. We could all die. Such variations are not allowed when entrenched constraints are already in place. So technological evolution is essentially, as I mentioned, identical to the Darwinian evolution. However, whereas Darwinian evolution in principle applies to speciation in biology, technological evolution applies to the cultural evolution. To the same communication processes which are specifically cultural and societal, like tool making, language, for example, right now, the emergence of cognitive, nanotech, technology, so on and so forth.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
I have a question, but it's a little bit tangent to the text that we've read. You mentioned in the beginning of this text about how AGI should be concerned with, should be full-fledged with normative dimensions and rulemaking, and this point I think is related to the thing that you discussed on Facebook some months ago about Putnam's liberal functionalism, and we've several days ago, before we've read your text, we've also read Putnam's critique of inductive discrete machines, of understanding of cognition as inductive discrete machines. So if you can, I think it will be great if you can comment on how you relate the project of AGI to Putnam's unrealized project of liberal functionalism and the project of AGI as a producer of normativity as such.
Sure. Of course, this is actually quite a difficult question, and I'm not really settled on my own answers on this. It's something that I need to think about. But all I can say at this point is that I do take side with Putnam, in the sense that, for example, you should understand where Putnam is actually coming from. Putnam coming from a critique of Popper, in the sense, but also critique of empiricists, in the sense that all of our engagements with what we call intelligible or destruction of the furnitures of the world are theory-related. And this essentially, the reason I'm mentioning is precisely because this is the reason why Putnam thinks that inductivism, we don't understand that inductivism simply doesn't mean that you are using induction. It means that induction is the only method that you can use and you will ever use. He thinks that this inductivism is by itself essentially a myth, precisely because every kind of scientific procedure, every kind of interaction that we actually make with regard to the world is theory-related, at one or another. So the theory-relatedness of our attractions upon reality or engagements with reality is central to the entire Putnam's thesis. Now, the thing, however, that I do not agree with Putnam, and I think that he also joins what you might call to be the ilk or the gang of conservative humanism, is that Putnam says that, okay, inductivism, this kind of formal learning procedures are not sufficient to make a general intelligence such as ours. They cannot do it. And he makes a formal proof of it, of course. It's called diagonalization argument. His alternative answer is that the reason that it is not possible is because we have informal rationality. Informal rationality in the sense of someone like Bragnon, or maybe even Habermas. The norms are informal rationality, and these norms cannot simply be converted into a statistical equations like an inductivist machine, a formal learning machine. Now, there is this writer called Kevin Kelly. During the 90s, he wrote a very escaping critique of Putnam, and I fully agree with him. He makes actually a very funny joke. He says that, so you have a computer at the middle. On one side of it, there's this computer scientist, and on the other side of it is a philosopher of mind. Every time the computer does something, and the computer scientist says that, oh, look at it, these are so interesting, the philosopher of mind says, turn off this stupid shit. I can give you informal rationality. But what does that even mean? What does informal rationality mean? It's simply, the more I have read of late Putnam, it seems that informal rationality is just what you might call to be the last strain of conservative pre-scientific humanism, in which the concept of reason or normativity itself is being discussed in terms of terms which are opaque to the scientific and logical procedures. We should be actually, I would say, we should be actually very vigilant about such ideas of informal rationality. In fact, if something that modern mathematics, modern computer science, modern logic show us is that, in fact, our reason is nothing but a multi-level view of different kinds of computation put together. And in that, our rationality should not be understood as something that we essentially, it is simply our own unique way of thinking about the world, and that's a very unique thing. No, I would say that informal rationality should at this point be understood in terms of theoretical computer science. And that actually does not simply reduce the idea in a Donatian greedy sense of reductionism. It does not reduce the idea of informal rationality, it enriches it. It enriches it.
I have a follow-up to that. So in terms of this, we just heard, I think 2 days ago or yesterday, 2 days ago, Ray's talk on Brandon's critique of CellRs, and he takes this kind of turn that, we shouldn't actually talk about CellRs as way too reductionist. We should actually criticize him for his holism. And I just wanted to ask, was this one of your...
Arthur, can you please repeat the last part of your question?
Oh,
I missed that.
Yeah, it's just that Ray, at the end of his talk, said that rather than criticizing CellRs for his so-called object naturalism, we should rather criticize him for his holism. So, and he suggested that we should rather take a much more naturalist turn in CellRs. And I just wanted to ask whether that was one of the things that actually turned you to Carnage rather than to CellRs in your recent.
Yes, well, I'm actually quite very anxious when someone brings the term naturalism. Naturalism for different philosophers means fundamentally different things. Naturalism sometimes actually means naturalization to some philosophers, in the sense that you get today Jordan Peterson with some of the bullshit new atheists, like who's that guy? Arthur Alchemy, the one who wrote about complexity, who came up with the word mean, the evolutionary scientist.
You mean Dawkins?
Dawkins, yes. So for them, naturalism simply means this kind of renaturalization. Now, naturalism, I do not know exactly what Gray means by naturalism. But for me, naturalism, I believe in a Hegelian understanding of naturalism. In the sense that naturalism essentially pertains or concerns with the concept of nature that allows both a move upstream and a move downstream. Upstream to the space of reasons, and downstream to the space of causes. Now, of course, none of these can be dispensed with at the expense of the other. Essentially, if you have only one of them, you are bipolar naturalist, and hence you are not essentially doing philosophy. Yes, if by naturalization we mean, this kind of move upstream and move downstream toward the enrichment of the logical resources and toward the enrichment of the causal factors, yes, I do agree that we need to further nationalize ours. But this is simply beholden to the very concept of naturalization we are using in our rhetoric.
So here, one of the problematic figures is basically Carnap, because there are a lot of kitsch interpretations, but I really wanted to hear your formal take on how do you think Carnap actually still appropriates this conscious reason, vis-a-vis at least how ours writes about it. So we haven't covered that, and I really wanted you, if you have any because it seems very kind of strange. Carnap is this figure who's usually very
yes, actually, Carnap is quite contradictory to what people understand about the question of naturalization. You see, at least in the time of when he wrote about the logical structure of the world, his masterpiece, his first tour de force, he was also, when you actually read it quite carefully, particularly the sections on the psychological determination, you realize that Carnap, if you were going to use the word naturalization, by naturalization he meant exactly like this kind of move upstream and move downstream. You have to enrich both logical structure and you have to uncover the causal factors. And try to somehow correlate them with one another in the sense that they cohere in the last instance. However, in the later works of Carnap, particularly after his essay, his incomplete essay attempt at a methodology, and his book, The Logical Syntax of Language, Carnap believed that naturalization can never actually be about uncovering of the causal factors. It can only be about the enrichment of the logical structures by which we uncover the causal factors. So he only believes from that point upward on the move in the move upstream toward the logical structure, toward the enrichment of the logical resources. Precisely because to him, any other kind of move actually results in something that scholars call the method of the given.
Thank you.
Carnap himself has found its roots not only in Sellars. In fact, he believes Sellars, in his later work, that Sellars is still beholden to the method of the given. But he finds the root of the method of the given in Wittgenstein and Kant. Wittgenstein's picture theory of language and Kant's idea of logic, transcendental logic, logic as a canon. Logic whose entire beauty is about the right application of rules of logic to the sensible intuitions.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, yeah. 1 second.
Hello, thank you for your presentation and answers. My question is related to the text, What is Philosophy, and to the today's text. And question is, what is the role of understanding in the project of artificial general intelligence and philosophy as a program approach which understands thinking as a computational process, maybe concerning the critique of John Searle of this computational approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My apologies, Artem. I think the voice got caught up at the beginning. Would you be able to repeat the first parts? I heard the last ones, but I mean, you can just kind kind of recapitulate the whole thing. My apologies.
Don't worry, the person will repeat it. 1 second.
Generally, the problem is what is the role of understanding? Understanding in the project of artificial general intelligence and in philosophy, because even in the context of relation between developed artificial intelligence and humans, there is a problem of some understanding. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So, may I actually ask a question in order to answer this coherently? When you say understanding, are you actually referring to the kind of a Kantian concept of understanding, wisdom?
No. 1 second. There's a lot of them.
Maybe in the sense like understands it, the understanding like the special capacity of human beings to have with semantics, and maybe in some sense it's a problem of hermeneutics, but in the context of relationship between realized artificial intelligence and human beings.
Sure. I think I can get exactly the question that you are posing. It's in the sense, if I'm not mistaken, that usually humans understand what they actually think, what they see, what they experience, whereas AGI just doesn't. And this is actually a problem that was posed by Jack Copeland in his introduction into artificial intelligence, a book that he wrote in the late 1980s. Which is basically, this is really the whole idea of Kant's idea of understanding. You see, understanding is essentially a furniture of experience, of subjective or apperceptive experience. We cannot talk about understanding without experience. It's in the sense that when we see something, we just don't detect it. We just don't simply differentiate, for example, this pattern from that pattern. We actually understand what it means we are trying to, even though that understanding can actually be subject to further negotiations and critique. Yes, so in that sense, we probably to answer your question, we really need to understand what understanding itself is. I mean, we know that in Kant, understanding is a kind of a two-way street. One from the space of sensible intuitions toward perceptual judgments made in the domain of understanding, which Kant calls intuitings, as opposed to the intuited objects, and one moving from the space of understanding to the space of sensible intuition. And that's really what Kant calls categories. Categories are essentially, what are they called categories? Precisely because they are classificatory structures. You know, we cannot talk about any kind of experience, and if we could understand what we are seeing, what we are smelling, so on and so forth, if we did not have some sort of categorical structure that could classify our sensible intuitions, give them some organization, some semblance of formatting. Now the thing is that AGI or AI at this point, we don't have any AGI ability. AGI is simply pure speculation at this point. But for example, when we are talking about AI, essentially we are in the domain of exactly the same kind of back and forth movements between understanding and sensible intuitions, categories and objects of it, and intuited objects, intuitings and intuited objects. And that's why we can, for us, such movements allow us to talk about our experience. Talking about experience means understanding. Now, the thing is that, okay, why is that? For example, we cannot yet ascribe in a coherent manner, even analogically speaking, the notion of understanding to an AI or a formal machine. Precisely because the way that the axioms of the language or logic or programming classificatory categories are brought to bear on the sensible intuitions, for example, the kind of data harnessed by a camera attached to an Uber machine or a drone. They are not fully in contact with. They are not merged together exactly the same way that we have it as a relation between the intuited object and the intuiting judging act unleashed by understanding. We don't have it, and precisely because this is really what you might call to be the secret of transcendental logic. If we could solve this problem, which is essentially a mode of integration between the empirical data or observational data and the kind of programs that is embedded into a machine. If we could brought these two poles to bear on one another, then I would say that we could actually make a fundamental breakthrough in the development of AGI. But right now, these are just what you might call to be, at this point, the relation between empirical observations gathered by a drone with a camera and the program itself, the axiomatic programming that is embedded in it. This relation is something quite parochial, actually. The data are not being structured in the sense that they are, in a way that they are being structured in our case, between understanding and categories and sensible intuition. The data for a drone or for such an AI machine, deep learning, they're simply being labeled. Categorization of data, empirical data, simply is labeling. And all classificatory acts are simply happen at the mere level of labeling of this data is this data is this pattern, this pattern, that pattern matching, essentially. But in our case, it's not about just labeling. The categories of understanding, or logic, or language actually do something more than labeling. They ramify the possible range of the sense data that we have just received, so we can talk about different possible variations, and from them make different conclusions about what we could actually anticipate to see in the environment. So you see, these are actually quite fundamental issues from a philosophical perspective. And I think that even though I still think that Kant is a conservative philosopher, I think Kant was fundamentally revolutionary in terms of understanding this relation between categories and sensible intuitions, understanding and sensible experience.
So now we have a lot of actually very general questions, since there are a lot of people with different backgrounds. We also have a
I wrote Cyclopedia. I started writing Cyclopedia in 2002. 2005, it was already finished. 3 years, basically, it was waiting to be published. First with one publisher, it went bankrupt, and then repurposed it. By the time that I finished it, I had already moved on to other projects. However, in hindsight, even though as you probably know, I often make fun of Cyclopedia and find it actually quite weak and level of execution. There is a connection between these stuff. Essentially, you should know where I'm coming from. I used to be fundamentally a Tunisian concept. If any approach that we have with thought should be understood in terms of the broad history of philosophy. The philosophy is that rather than just the nature or past. And that section really tries to take all of these Deleuzian theses to their farthest conclusions. What happens at the final stage? Well, you sometimes hit the wall, and I did hit the wall. To the point that even though I was still interested in a set of concepts, I just didn't see that how more actually coherently be explicated, explained, and further built on without me moving toward a different kind of philosophy. The whole idea is that any philosopher. Sometimes philosophers actually get this illusion that they are the voice of philosophy, but that's just a mistake. Obviously, when you only work with a kind of a philosopher, no matter how much your concepts are still intact and you hold them dear, you notice that such a philosopher is no longer sufficient. And for you to address your words about the concepts you are working with, as you are trying to build those. And yes, so what are these concepts? I think that it's obvious that one of the concepts is the concept of the mind. Another concept is the idea of outside, in the Deleuzian sense. But then you notice that the kind of philosophical division or philosophical niche you were pigeonholed could only be kind of methodological advantages to tackle with such concepts. But such methodological advantages are essentially exhaustible. And that's why I saw that they can no longer, I cannot push these concepts with such methodologies applicable to structure with philosophy. So I have to move on to a different kind of philosophy to get a new kind of aims and arrows to shoot at my concepts. And that was basically it. That's how, I turned into this kind of philosophy. But it is not by any means what you might call to be some sort of mourning or a kind of Christianity reborn kind of stuff. No, it's simply that understanding that if you are a philosopher, you at some point you understand the methods by the country we're sitting in are very limited, and then you have to branch out. That's how I would say this.
Reza, I'm so sorry. Your feed was constantly breaking. So could you like repeat the same answer but like in a very succinct form? I'm sorry.
Sure. I was saying that. So essentially, it's not that Cyclopedia is about different concepts. Yes, some concepts are different, but the core concepts are still the same. Outside, the idea of thoughts, the idea of non-human, so on and so forth. However, to work with concepts require a sufficient armamentarium or toolbox of methods. I realized that working in a post-structuralist vein had very much limited my methodological maneuvering. So that's why I had to branch out. It's not that as if I woke up in one morning and saw that, oh shit, I am now a Catholic reborn. No. It was simply out of methodological necessity.
And as a kind of continue, we have another question.
Thank you. It's sort of a follow-up to the previous question. In Encyclopedia, you put out what I may call a theory of a certain kind of writing. And also, I think that this book also exemplifies this specific practice of writing. Well, we might call it theory fiction or whatever. How do you evaluate this specific writing practice, this practice of writing philosophy now? I mean, is it, to put it very crudely, and I'm sorry, it's not a confrontational statement, it's just the only way I can formulate it. Do you think it's a failed project, or it is just a project that you are not interested anymore?
Sure. The sound was a little bit distorted, but I think I got the gist. So my apologies if my answer is totally irrelevant to your question. But yes, you see, to be honest with you, I'm actually far more normal than many people who try to somehow bring together their philosophy and fiction writing. For me, fiction requires a different kind of procedure. You see, the worlds of literature are fundamentally different from the worlds made in the domain of philosophy. Yes, they do indeed have connections. They have a tissue that connects them together conceptually. But the approaches that you make in the world of fiction writing and the world of philosophy should be fundamentally different. There are certain kinds of moves I can make in the realm of fiction that I cannot do in the realm of philosophy, and vice versa. And to that extent, no, I don't use exactly every kind of concept that I have at my disposal in philosophy at the service of literature. Because I think the world of literature is fundamentally different from the idea of philosophy. And usually I get these, objections from people that, well, you now are talking about human rationality. But then how the fuck did you write about oil as a sentient being? Well, this is a fiction. The world of fiction requires a different kind of approach. And even the way that we interact with literature is fundamentally different from the way that we interact with philosophy.
And I guess as my kind of follow-up, I wanted to ask about specifically the project of neo-rationalism. And this is the question that you asked me to ask anyway. point answered by Pete's post on the Ontologistics forum, but at the same time I wanted to ask, he seems to have a more succinct view of people like you, like him, like Ray, but I wanted to ask whether you think that there are some divergent approaches to problems that you pursue, rather than,
Yes.
you at some point referred to this as you don't want it to become like an incestual festival. So do you think that there is some divergence in this now?
Intellectual circuit. I mean, I would say that those philosophers who, in fact, are happy with their cozy circles, and they simply try to downplay possible points of divergence, are not philosophers. They are propagandists. Philosophers absolutely should go for divergence. I mean, our entire alliance is only the thinking. All of us. As such, we should not really be happy when there is a risk of being pigeonholed into some sort of niche or ancestral collection of ideas. And yes, of course, every thought, every new vector of philosophy emerges from some sort of consensus, and we move through it. But then, after a period of consensus, when you actually start to elaborate ideas, you understand that there are so many, in fact, points of divergence and separation that they need to be addressed. And I would say that, yes, absolutely, the points of divergence currently are my commitment to the idea of realism. I thought about it, it seems to me, it's not that idea of realism is haphazard, but nonetheless, it is rife with so many problems that haven't been articulated since the time of Kant. And by the way, I do not think that Kant is a correlationist in the way that Meyasu talks about fact or realist. He is in fact a realist, but even in his realism, making flawed moves that I have seen being made by the like of Sellars, by the like of my friends Ray and Pete. This, however, doesn't mean that we are, divorcing each other. I mean, essentially, we are agreeing on the same set of premises. But I think that it would be worthwhile to elaborate these points of divergences with regard to the question of realism, with regard to the question of objectivity, with regard to the question of what we mean by reason.
Thank you so much, and I think we have the last question, and there's this sort of a context to it. I mean, we're all... Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Reza, can you hear me? Okay, we'll try it one more time. I'm just going to design it.
это потому что...
Reza?
Yes.
Wonderful. Fine. Okay, but this is the last question, so I think we're kind of really exhausted.
Did you hear the answer to the previous question?
What?
Did you hear the answer to the previous question?
Yeah, it was wonderful. I think we're kind of overusing the internet connection from here. I don't think Siberia supports this kind of conversation. But I kind of told you about the school, so we have a lot of kind of new researchers who are trying to go into their own fields and trying to tackle with some sort of novel problems in philosophy and novel outcomes. So this last question is kind of about this. So.
Yeah, I want to ask this conclusive question, but to ask it, I want to return to our first concern about the part of your book. To return to disconnection thesis, and as I presume, this thesis presupposes some kind of an attitude of human beings who are related somehow to their future. And in that case, I wanted to ask whether your critique of this disconnection thesis have a related attitude to their future. Maybe it's somehow related to autodidactism. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. My apologies. Your voice was being cut at the end. Arthur, could you really, I don't need to, I got the gist of the whole question, but the last part, would you be able to repeat it, Arthur, for me?
It's basically the question that connects, I think, with everybody at the school. It's a question about do you think that it's somehow connected, with not maybe with just general ethical concerns about what's happening right now in the academia, but maybe also it has something to do, with reason in general.
Yes. Well, you see, the first thing is that autodidacticism is not simply being self-taught. Yes, I know, I understand that the meaning of the word simply it means being self-taught. But you should understand that autodidacticism is essentially a brand or a vein of a different kind of philosophy that's usually, have been put forward since the time of Plato. For example, I suggest Ibn Nafis, Risalat al-Nabawiyya, and Ibn Tufayl, Philosophicus Autodidactus, Theologus Autodidactus, and Philosophicus Autodidactus. Essentially, both of these works deal with the question of autodidacticism, in the sense that philosopher is someone like a feral child, who has been born on a desert island, and spontaneously generates, starts to roam around, sees stuff, and then at some point, by some virtue, either castaways come to the island, or that child manages to make some sort of device that bridges his island to other kinds of islands. The philosopher, the autodidactic philosopher, come into contact with other kinds of subjects. Essentially, autodidacticism, the more you think about it, is the whole point of the desert island. What does desert island actually mean? It means that a land oasis at the middle of the ocean. Many people actually make a cliche of it, as if it's some sort of escapist, dream of doing philosophy, of thinking differently about the world. But the first things that we should understand about the notion of island, particularly the desert island, is that it is the very signification of the idea that I am living on an island, a particular kind of world, and the particularity of which signifies that I am actually part of an infinite ocean, where there can be many other islands, many other alternative worlds. And this is really, I would say, the ultimate pieces of autodidacticism. A certain kind of philosophical upbringing and philosophical self-discipline that coincides with the conclusion that I am willing to embrace all possible alternative worlds, to venture out. And that's, I would say, is a task of philosophy, if not the task of life.
Okay, Reza, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Have a great day, my friends.
Thank you. It's already night here. You have a good one.
No, take care very much. Honored. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Так, ну, этим завершается трек по неорационализму. И я хочу сказать спасибо всем, кто присутствует на школе, и всем, кто выдержал наши технические неполадки, все проблемы, безумное количество мушкары. Спасибо вам за все, и надеюсь, вы получите огромное количество информации и удовольствия.
Спасибо, Артем.
Ну да, да.